Hello, Patty here, and I am so happy to be back making YouTube videos. I have been really busy this past couple of months, but just so excited to be back and getting caught up with all of these videos that I have for you guys. And today is gonna be all about Pico tanks, specifically this Pico that I got from SR Aquaristic. And I ordered it, and it took around 3 to 4 days to be delivered, and packaging was really good and it arrived in perfect condition. It is a 2.3 gallon square Pico tank, and do note that the leveling mat that some Picos come with, this one does not, but if you go to their website you can purchase a leveling mat for this Pico. Currently, I do not have any leveling mat, but it is definitely beneficial to get one, and I do suggest you to get one. Alrighty, let's start this build. So for this Pico tank, I just grabbed things that I had laying around from other builds that I had pretty much left over. For the sand, it was the Carib Sea Fiji Pink sand that I had just laying around. This was used sand, so I did rinse it very well with our DI water until the water ran clear. And I rinsed it on that little orange pail that you see. And then for the rock, I used Carib Sea rock. It is a white rock, but because it was already cured and I have used it for years by now, it's no longer white, it is brown. For the sand, I normally for the sand bed, I do a really thin sand bed because height wise, this Pico doesn't give me that much real estate for the height that it is, so I don't want to use so much of the height on sand, but I do want to have sand for that beneficial bacteria to grow. And I just like the look of sand, but you can definitely, if you don't want to use sand, that's perfectly fine. You can just go and just use rock. I also like the sand because it kind of protects the glass, the bottom glass, from scratching or even cracking, especially with such a big rock that I'm going to put on the middle. So if for some reason it tumbles down, it's not going to come crashing down on a bare bottom tank. So I go and just even it out through the tank, and you can also use different sand, type of sand. I have used Fiji Pink. I have used a mix of different types of sand without any problem. I use crushed coral on my other Pico tank. I have used the premium grade sand. So pretty much choose the sand that you would like, but definitely take into consideration the height of your tank, like how tall is your tank, because with these Picos, real estate is precious. And also, if you're planning to do a Pico tank like mine with a really tall rock, I will suggest to have sand rather than no sand bed, because again, if for some reason it comes toppled down, at least the sand will cushion that rock falling, because the rock that I'm using is at least 5 pounds of weight. So something to take into consideration. So I do like for these Picos for my rock to be above the water. I think it gives it a really nice look and more like depth, but also know that when you're putting such a big rock on the middle, you do need to kind of work around with your light, because you are putting a big rock on the middle, and especially the shading that rock might do to the tank. So I will say, if you're gonna do a rock like this one, as you see, try to get a skinny rock first, because it's less weight that the whole rock will have, and also less shading for when you add the light to your tank. Another thing that I suggest is robo rock. If you're gonna be using a big tall rock, is to secure that rock very well using robo rock all around. Another thing where I like to do robo rock, and also what I don't like to glue or mortar my Pico tanks aquascape or rockscape, is because with Pico tanks, things do grow rather quickly, and some corals can shadow others or even go and sting other corals. So it is, for me, I prefer to be able to grab those rolling rocks and reposition them if I see that one coral is trying to take over the other or they're fighting, and go and also rearrange everything. From time to time, I do, like every couple of months, I see it and I'm like, oh, let me re-escape it and let me redo it, and love it that I can do that because this rockscape is not glued together. So something to think about when doing Pico tanks that is a little bit different than with doing bigger tanks. Another thing, like as you see here, I'm using my tweezers. Definitely be careful and delicate when you are doing aquascapes and working around with your rock on your tank, especially Pico tanks. And big rocks like these, they can come tumbling down and they can crack or even break your glass of your tank. So definitely make sure that you always have an eye on your rockscape when you're putting it together, especially when it's almost like gravity defying rockscapes. And I also like to have my rockscape, especially when it's gravity defined, to be on the middle, because if I add any type of crab or such, I don't want them to crawl out of the tank, which I have seen, not all of them, but certain animals can crawl out of the tank. So I try to put it on the middle of my rockscape that comes out of the tank. I like to put it on the middle just to have a good place where some inhabitants can crawl up and be out of the water and no get out of the tank. Alrighty, let's now move on to equipment and filtration for the Pico tank. So what I did with this Pico tank is I took some of these ceramic bio media. There are ChemiPure bio balls that I removed from my sump of a already established tank, and I'm moving them here to help seat this tank. Also know that I took some of that rubble rock that I use on this Pico tank from the same sump of an established tank, just to help getting this tank going and the beneficial bacteria and have a little to no cycle. So also I use ChemiPure Blue, these ChemiPure Blue nano packets, and they are rated for up to 5-gallon tanks. And before I use them all the time, and every 3 months I will change them. But lately I only use them for around the first month. And again, it's just to help stabilize this tank, being a new tank and being such a small water volume. So I do and rinse them. You definitely want to rinse them before you add them to the tank. And then I also add them to the bank of the tank. Again, I just want to hide it so I don't see the little ChemiPure packet. You could also just add a little bit of carbon if you have some and put it in there. It helps clean the water. I do like the ChemiPure Blue because it helps with like phosphates, nitrates, as well as having carbon. So I feel like it's a little bit of oomph rather than just putting activated carbon. But I see it just as personal preference. So for water movement, I use these little return pumps. I will put the information below, and make sure that your pump does come with a way that you can control the flow of the pump to make sure you have enough flow so you can have a really nice and well oxygenated water and the gas exchange. But that is not going to go over your tank, especially how little these tanks are, and they make a mess. And I have pumps that have made a mess. So definitely get one of those little pumps that you can control the flow. So let's talk about placement. For placement, it really depends on the type of rockscape, aquascape that you are doing. So for this Pico being a square and being that my rockscape is on the middle, I am adding it all the way to the back and to the side, and placement is around mid to higher level on that wall, so I get a nice surface agitation and get a good water movement, but being careful with the sand. Because also another thing of putting a lot of sand on your Picos or having some type of sand is that if your water movement is too strong, then it will always be cloudy because you will always be moving sand around, or you will have a little part of your Pico will have no sand because of the water current that will move the sand away from that specific part of your Pico. And for the heater, here I'm using a 25 watt heater, and it is preset to 78 degrees. My picos actually run closer to 79, 80 degrees, while my bigger tanks run more around 77 degrees. And I haven't had any problems with my picos running a little bit higher at around closer to 80 degrees. And I add also the beneficial bacteria, which is the stability, and I add it for 7 to 10 days once I start my pico, and then every week during water changes. And here you can see the filtration media, which is the Chemi Pure Blue and the bio balls, and that's pretty much it. Oh, actually we need the light. So for this pico I am using a Asta 20, which is by Lomi. Hopefully I'm pronouncing it correctly. And I'm putting it to the side, and I'm trying to put it to a point where I don't have that much of that shading that I was talking earlier on. So the closest that you put it right above that rock is the best, so there is less shading. Or you can even put it to one side, so you can have a little bit of shading on the back, and you can put all your corals on the front. That also works. And also I added an air plant, and it is something that I really like to do. Do be careful. I had to remove all the air plants after a while from all my pico tanks because my cat loves air plants. The air plants that I bought, they're safe for cats, so even if she got into them, she was safe, nothing happened. But do know that some air plants can be bad for pets, especially if you have pets and if they get into it. So if you want more information about air plants, I will put a link down below on the air plants that I purchased. That's pretty much it for a pico tank build. It is pretty simple, pretty straightforward. It is really budget friendly too. Like the light cost me, this Asta I already had it, but the light I believe is around $50, and all you need is like a 5 pound of rock that you can go to your local fish store and get. Or like I did, you can just use some sand and rubble rock from your sump or extra rock that you had from previous builds. One thing I do recommend that you don't see on this video but I do have is an auto top off. You definitely want a good auto top off because the evaporation on these little tanks are a lot every day, and you will have to be pretty much having to top off your tank with RDI water every day. So if you have a auto top off for it, it is way better. And you can use the bottle auto that I have talked about. I will put the link below. And besides that, I really love these little tanks. And I have sexy shrimp on it. I have some soas. I have a rock flower anemone, and I have a little goni frag, and I also have some macroalgae because I do remove the Chemi Pure Blue, and I do remove like carbon and such. So I do like to have some macroalgae to kind of do the things that the chemical filtration will do for me, but in a more like natural way, especially in such a small footprint of a tank. Here it is, guys. Really love my tank, and they're really fun to have these picos, and I will be talking more about these pico tanks. I hope you guys like this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment if you have any questions, and stay awesome.